Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the annual Oscar Romero Solidarity Lecture. My name is Catherine Geddick-Soltis, and I serve as Director of the Center for Peace and Justice Education here at Villanova University. For many years, our center has organized lectures inspired by St. Oscar Romero, pictured here in front of me. He was a man whose life and death exemplified solidarity with the poor and marginalized. This past Monday, March 24th, was Romero's feast day. It marked 45 years since he was assassinated in the middle of celebrating Mass. He had known for some time that his life was in danger. Romero was appointed Archbishop of San Salvador in 1977 in the midst of unbelievable violence and repression. After coming to realize the extent of the suffering of the people, he became an unfailing voice for the voiceless. He stood up against poverty, social injustice, torture, assassinations, and disappearances. He has become a model for all those who are committed to dignity, justice, and solidarity. Today, we have the incredible honor of hearing from yet another model, made from the same fabric as St. Romero, a woman who is profoundly committed to dignity, justice, and solidarity. Missionary of Jesus, Sister Norma Pimentel. Sister Norma has become one of the leading voices in this country for upholding the dignity of migrants. As Executive Director of Catholic Charities at the Rio Grande Valley, she oversees the charitable branch of the Diocese of Brownsville, the second largest Catholic diocese in the United States. She has over 20 years of experience in providing oversight to a diverse set of ministries and social services in the Rio Grande Valley, such as homeless prevention, disaster relief, clinical counseling, pregnancy care, food assistance, and humanitarian relief to immigrants. In 2014, during the influx of immigrants entering the United States through the southern border, Sister Pimentel, with the support of the local community, established the Humanitarian Respite Center, providing a safe space for immigrants to rest before continuing their journey to the other parts of the United States. 10 years later, the Humanitarian Respite Center has become the largest respite center in our country, welcoming over 500,000 immigrants in the course of 10 years. Pope Francis personally thanked Sister Norma for this work during his visit to the US in 2015. And in 2020, she was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people. She serves as a consultant to the US Bishops' Ad Hoc Committee Against Racism and has testified before the US Commission on Human Rights and the United Nations. Sister Norma received the University of Notre Dame's prestigious Laterre Medal, Catholic Charity USA's Keep the Dream Alive Award, and has been granted multiple honorary degrees from universities across the country. As a daughter of Mexican immigrants, Sister Norma frequently crossed the border back and forth from Brownsville to Matamoros, Mexico, to be with family on both sides of the border. She was born in Texas while her parents were awaiting response from US authorities on their application for residency. We are so very honored tonight to learn from her life, her witness, her ministry. Tonight's event is titled Solidarity and Resistance at the Border, the Prophetic Cost of Mercy. What a privilege it is to be in the presence of someone who can speak to such work. I would like to recognize and give special thanks tonight to two mission and ministry colleagues, Marisol Lescano and Ray Ward. They've done a tremendous amount of work to make tonight possible. The energy, thoughtfulness, and care that they have put into this evening is truly a gift to us all. Thank you both so much. Tonight, we will hear a bit from Sister Norma, and then we'll move to a conversation between her and my colleague, Tanya Romero. Finally, we'll close with a few questions that have been submitted by some of you here. I warmly welcome those of you who are watching via live stream, and I am happy to share that we are recording this evening and a video will be posted to the Peace and Justice website a bit later. Before we welcome Sister Pimentel to speak, We will first be hearing from Father Art Beccaro, Augustinian friar and Vice President for Mission and Ministry here at Villanova University. Father Art, thank you.
Sister Norma, you cannot imagine what a great privilege it is for us to be able to welcome you to Villanova University for the first of many visits. You truly grace us with your presence. You bless us. God blesses us through your coming here. And we want you to know that you are welcome. Bienvenida. Mi casa es tu casa. So easy to say, but what does it mean? Welcome, bienvenido, en este caso bienvenida, es acoger, es abrazar, es encuentro, es dar espacio. Those different things which it means, such a simple word, welcome, a profound gathering of those who love God. Bienvenida. We will be enriched by God's presence through you, and we long to be challenged by you to continue to grow, to become the people who we are called to be. When you welcome somebody, you need to make space for that person. We don't stay in the same space. Somebody comes and you move, and you move together, and we hope you help us move together. About 15 years ago, when I had hair, one of the Mercy sisters from Puerto Rico, who now works here, she had her nephew come to Villanova to see if he wanted to scout out. Academically, had no problem, but he wanted to see how we felt, what it would be like for him. And after the visit was done, the Blue Key visit, which we all know, and he sat down, he said, Tia, not you, Tia, my Tia, he said, Tia, it doesn't feel like home. And he didn't come. He could not make this his home for the following 4 or 5 years. He just didn't feel that this would express who he was. And that's when we took very seriously the challenge to not be called, but not have a reason to be called Villanova again. To reach out, to know that we can learn. We will be better to the extent that we reach out to others and share among us, learn and teach. The challenge of truly welcoming somebody. So we are very much looking forward to your challenge, God's challenge that you present to us. What's the next step for us to go? This university was named after St. Thomas Villanova, who was a person, a real live human being, before he became an institution and a saint. He was a person who realized that God gifted everything for everybody. Enough for all, forever. He believed it. And so he wanted to become an Augustinian, to join with others who shared that belief, that everything is given to us, not for us, to share with others. The Augustinian commitment to sharing our common goods. And because he did that so well, the witness, they called him to be a bishop in a very wealthy diocese in the 1500s in Spain. And he convinced the wealthy there to share to the very many poor, establishing work, schools, medical attention. And then the Augustinians had the wisdom to name him their superior. And he had the wisdom to send the very first missionaries to these lands. 1533 to Mexico and 1535 to Peru. Be clear, transparent, I was not among that first group. I came a few years after that. so they could share and be shared with by the native people here. And that is who Thomas of Villanova is. And that's who we hope Thomas of Villanova, this community, continues to be, to learn how to share what God has gifted us with, not for us, to us, but be able to share it with others. Our very own province, the province of the Augustinians, is called St. Thomas of Villanova, just like this university, and was founded by immigrants to attend to the immigrants who came here, to look after them. This is our point of origin. And this is the reason why we are looking so much forward to your visit, so that you can help us understand God's passion and your dedication to having all of us understand what it means when we say bienvenida. Mi casa este, bienvenido a mi casa. Mi casa es tuya. Welcome, hermano.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. I'm honored truly to be here with you, especially on this day, this amazing person here that you are recognizing, Oscar Romero. It's very significant to me because especially when I decided to enter the religious life, it was something somebody asked me today, one of the young girls, how that happened. And it was not something that I had planned or thought about ever in my life, I was just a typical, regular Sunday goer that just went to church on Sundays and that was it, And me and God really didn't know each other very well. And but he fixed that at some point in my life after I sort of had to rethink how my plans. I thought I had my life already figured out, how I was going to conquer the world, and with my art, because I really truly have a gift with my hands to paint. And since I was in kinder, I have always known of this gift, and so that was how I saw my life ahead of me until one day I happened to go to a prayer group. If you ever heard that story, I share that. The only reason I went to the prayer group was not because I was interested in going to pray, but because I was wanting to go to have pizza, and the people that were inviting me were first going to stop at pizza at the prayer group, and then after that, we were going to a Pizza Hut. So I said, I'll go. And that's where God got me. They actually prayed for me, and it worked, and I'm here. And I joined the Missionaries of Jesus, a group of sisters from Spain, who at the time in the Rio Grande Valley, they, back in the 80s, Border Patrol, immigration did not really have a response to put anybody anywhere that were women and children. So they would call the sister and says, can we take you this mother and this child? And that's what I was introduced to by the sisters when I entered the religious life. And so immigrants have been part of my formation, having them share with us in community life and responding to their needs and caring for them and helping them has always been part of my religious involvement in the church. And so here I am. Then Pope Francis decided to single me out. It was so amazing that, when I was responding together with the community in South Texas to help the immigrants that were coming to the border in great numbers, and it was a response that we saw the families. They were there in our community, and they needed help. And I organized the response to reach out to them and see how to figure out what to do. We didn't have time to put together a parish response and say, okay, let's have a meeting and figure out, do we have the money? Do we have the resources? No, we saw the need and we responded. And I just told myself, think, Norma, what do you need to do? There's people there that need you. What do we need to do? So I called for the Tom who oversaw the parish hall closest to the bus station, and I said, Father Tom, can I borrow your parish hall for a couple of days? Had no clue that this was going to be forever, pretty much, right? And so he said, sure, sister, go get the key, and secretary will let you have the key. And so I did, and instantly, the humanitarian response just happened. The whole parish hall was in one moment occupied fully by immigrants and families, and we were just calling through social media, we need Pampers, we need milk, we need this, we need that. It poured, and everybody, believe me, everybody got involved. City government came over and says, what are you doing here, Sister Norma? It was late in the evening, maybe like 10:30, 11 at night, and I turned around and I looked at everybody, families helping families, feeding them, clothing them, helping them with this, cleaning them up, A parish hall doesn't have but restrooms with a sink and a toilet. And they were muddy, and they were in terrible conditions. And I turned and looked at this man and I said, restoring human dignity, that's what we're doing. He didn't expect my answer. So much so, he took some steps back, and then he comes back and looks at me, and he says, Sister, if I had a magic wand, what would that do for you? Showers? And sure enough, that evening we had a mobile unit of 8 showers. Amazing. You would see the ladies come out of the shower, and we had to time it, just 5 minutes, okay? You could hear them cry inside of that shower as water just cleansed them, and walked out of it glowing. It was so beautiful to see that. And I would say, ¿Cómo te sientes? How do you feel? And the lady would just say, se siente tan bien. It feels so good. And I said, thank this man right here. He made it happen. He turns red, Yes, he made it happen. The next day, the mayor said, anything sister needs, you give it to her. The whole city government. And then I said, well, we need to sit down with Border Patrol, ICE. Let's talk. Let's figure this out together. We had lawyers, we had doctors, we had restaurants, universities, families, all of us together. It was not just Catholics, it was Lutherans, Presbyterians, Jewish, evangelicals. All came and says, what can I do? The whole community, one church. It was amazing. And we did it together because we saw them. We have to allow ourselves to get close enough to see. Because if you don't see, you won't feel. And you really won't respond the way God is calling us to move forward and to do something good. That's why we were restoring human dignity, because the moment they walked into the parish hall, they were scared, they were frightened. They weren't sure what was going to happen. They didn't know who to trust, but they trusted a nun. And I said, can you allow us to help you? And so they did. And so we were able to do this. And the Holy Father heard about this, so much so that he asked, I remember this lady from, I think it's ABC with David Muir, 2020 program. I had no clue who this guy was. But when they start calling me and they said, sister, we're going to have a very important person who will be present via satellite with you. She didn't want to tell me who. You have to tell me, because they wanted me to keep the families for an extra day, As the families arrive, we help them get cleaned up, rest, eat, and they go on. They have a journey to continue. They won't stay. And she said, you have to tell me. I said, well, I'll tell you, but you can't tell nobody. They really were very secretive about this. They didn't want nobody to know. And I said, the La Papa is going to be present. La Papa is a potato, you know? Oh, you mean El Papa, you know? Yes, El Papa. Okay, he's gonna be here tomorrow via satellite. They set up the whole church, like from the whole, completely, a screen big enough to cover the whole area. And I said, but I have to tell my bishop. Oh, no, you can't tell your bishop. You cannot tell nobody. But I have to tell him. He's my boss, you know? He needs to know. And I say, Bishop, tomorrow the Holy Father is going to be present at Sacred Heart. Nah. Say, really, Bishop? Really? Yes. And then they call him from the Vatican. Does the bishop know that the Holy Father is going to be there tomorrow and via satellite? He said, yes, he does. So this is how it happened. And I said, can I say hello to him? And they said, no, sister, you can't. It's only the families and the children that the Holy Father really wants to talk to. Not even hi? I said, no, sister. Okay, so I sat in the pews just like you, somewhere around there. And he comes on. And he's very happy talking to the families and the children. Beautiful interaction with them. And then the host, Mariana, said, and Holy Father, we have here the mayor and the bishop and the sister and un momento. Yo quiero conocer a la hermana Norma. I go, oh my God, that's me. My goodness, I couldn't believe what he was saying, that he actually wanted to talk to me. And so I stood up. He said, Ben. Get out of the pew. I want to see you up close. So I came up to the front, and he was right there. He's talked to me. I don't know what he said. I heard it afterwards. But the only thing I did hear was the ending where he said, in Spanish, I don't know if it's right for a Holy Father to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I love you very much. And then they translated it into English and said, I love you all sisters very much. I said, no. He said, you. But I don't mind sharing with all the sisters. But anyway, because of that, the media picked up and said the Pope's favorite nun. And that's why you hear that a lot. I wondered if he knows it. But I was actually speaking at the Vatican just recently, and one of the sisters that works there introduced me as the Pope's favorite nun. Oh, so you know. So it is so amazing, you know, and what a privilege that the work that we are able to do together is recognized by our Holy Father, how important it is to be present, to be able to be there for, and welcome, as Father Art mentioned, dar la bienvenida. The moment these families enter our center, our space, scared and frightened, not knowing what to expect, having experienced a journey where they're destroyed in so many ways, abuse, hardships that is beyond understanding of what they go through. Time after time, I've used to hear story after story of how one and another person just simply takes advantage of them, hurts them, abuses them. That little girl, that the Holy Fathers met that night that he was present to us. Her mother, her story was so sad. She was taken advantage by a group of men. And she said, "Please do with me whatever you want, but don't touch my little girl." And the little girl told me, "I don't know why, but my mother is crying every day. And I don't know what happened to her." And this was this child and the family that the Holy Father met. And they were able to have the Holy Father give them a sense of hope, a sense of something beautiful. It is these families who are coming to our country. These families that find themselves here after having left their country and journey off and leaving everything behind. And a lot of times we think and ask ourselves, why? Why would they come? Why would they risk their lives? Why do they dare put their children in that danger? I remember, with all these times, all these people from the media come up, and I remember this very famous person from one of these TV stations, she put a mic at me, "Sisters, why do these mothers do this and risk the life of their children?" And I said to her, "Are you a mother?" And she said, "Yes." "Wouldn't you do anything for your child to make sure your child is okay, is safe?" And you know what she did? She started to cry. She said, "Yes, I would." Well, this is what these mothers are doing. Sometimes they have to tell their child, "Go with the officer. Don't tell them I'm here," so they can take you. Because if I go with you, they're going to send us back. But they'll let you stay here if you go by yourself. This is what a mother has to do. It's not easy to do that. But it's the only way they find to save that child. So what we have done and what we do at the border is welcome. Dar la bienvenida to people that don't think they deserve it. So we applaud, as said, aplaudimos y decimos bienvenidos. It just transforms them. It changes their faces in recognizing that they are people, that they are okay, that they are somebody, that somebody sees them. And this is what this is about, that sometimes I find it hard to understand why it has become such a political issue in our country when it's truly a very humanitarian reality. I always share this story and I share it because it was what grounded me. Right then at the beginning when we responded together and I convened everybody, let's take them to Sacred Heart. And I asked the local judge, I would like to go inside of a detention center because I hear there's a lot of children in there. I want to see the children. So he got me in. Nobody had ever gone into a detention center before that. And sure enough, the detention center was filled with kids. Little ones, not more than 10 years old, most of them. And they were dirty, all gray. You know how mud dries in your face and your body, your clothes? They were all gray. And they were all crying. This The cells that they were in, big windows, all the little faces looking out with their eyes, just looking at us. Faces full of tears. Tell the officer, I would like to go in there with them. And officer, no ma'am, we cannot let you go in there. I said, I want to pray with them. They looked at each other and I said, how can you say no to a nun that wants to pray, right? So I got myself in. But you know, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. To walk into one of the cells, barely getting myself to enter because they were so tight. They were there not one day, not 1 week, for a long while. Because they didn't have a choice but to keep them there, because the people they need to turn those children over to is the Department of Office of Refugee and Resettlement, known as ORR. They're the only ones that can handle children that are unaccompanied. And they're only unaccompanied not because they came by themselves, because sometimes they came with grandma or an older sibling, but because our laws tries to protect children that are not with their immediate mother or father. They were separated and classified as unaccompanied children. So those children found themselves in those detention facilities waiting until this Office of Refugee and Resettlement found out up to code place to put them. In the meantime, they were there. I heard afterwards some of the kids that came out of there share with me about how they took turns closing their eyes to rest because they couldn't sit down, much less lay down. Kids in the United States, this is how we treated them. So I started to cry. They were pulling my dress. Sácame de aquí. Get me out of here, please. So I cried with them and said, vamos a rezar, let's pray. And they prayed with me. Diosito, ayúdanos. And they prayed with me. God, help us. Officers were looking inside. As when the kids were looking at us, now they looked inside. And they too were crying. Sometimes it's hard to understand. How can we lose sight of that humanity? When I walked out, the officer tells me, thank you, sister. You helped us realize they're human beings. How can we forget? How can we justify and say they're not people? That comes first beyond anything else. We are called by God to be there for one another. We're responsible to make sure that they're okay. How can we turn our backs on humanity? What answer are we going to have when we're asked that? I believe that every one of us has it in our heart to care. I have seen that. I see it in the Border Patrol agents. I see in everybody that is able to see a child like I have witnessed, see a family in distress. You too will do the same thing I have done, because God made us that way, to care. But I feel that somehow we keep ourselves from seeing, and we allow ourselves to be distracted kind of like in a bubble, keeping us from really feeling and seeing what we're called to do, to care, to be present. Sometimes we can't do nothing more than be present. Because that is what God wants of us. Our Holy Father constantly speaks to us about reaching out to the peripheries. What does that mean if it isn't to reach out to those who were living out of our circle? To reach out to those that are sort of like invisible, not seen. We need to stop ourselves and care enough to go and do something about it. We need to let our faith come alive and take over us and make us do the things we must do. We need to stop being silent. I heard Gustavo Gutierrez once say this, and one of the last times I heard him, I was in Rome. He said, we must not be voice for the voiceless, but rather we must help them have a voice. Yes, we must speak so they can be heard, so they can be seen, so that we all take note of the fact that they're people. And when we recognize their humanity, we recognize ours. So I believe that we all have a lot of work to do. And we can start by really doing what Pope Francis constantly tells us. Really radicalize kindness, gentleness, love, mercy. Really go out of our way to care for ourselves, for our family, for our neighbors, and for those who are hurting and suffering, so that in the process of, we make God visible to one another. We make him alive. I was, one of my first years in my religious life, I was very young and ignorant and learning about church. After he decided to call me to become a religious and follow him more closely, Sister Juliana Garcia, an amazing woman who was my mentor, my teacher, one day she was, we had a house called Casa Oscar Romero. And in that house, we received thousands of immigrants that were just crossing the river and ended up at a shelter that the bishop allowed for us to have for people from El Salvador and from Nicaragua. They were running away from those countries that were suffering from those wars that they were facing there. And the stories that we would hear, I was very young, I was 24 years old, and didn't know better other than just sit there and listen, but these families, like just young men would share with me and show me his hands, and the tortures that they went through were terrible. He said, look, sister, I don't have a single nail in my hands. That's how they tortured me. That was one of the stories that I heard back then. And one day we were going to lunch, Sister Juliana and myself, and she said, Norma, today we're going to stop at the congressman's office because a group of people, citizens from here, from the community, are advocating, asking the congressman why he is voting in favor of sending $1 million a day of tax dollars to support in destroying these families that we're helping here in Casa Oscar Romero. And we know that who they are because we help them every day. We see them arrive every single day. Let's go support this people from the community that are questioning our congressman. Why is he in favor of this? It's not helping these families. It's destroying communities in El Salvador. So I think we should show our support to these people that are questioning our congressman. And then we stopped there at lunchtime. That was going to be our lunch time. And at that moment that we arrived, the manager of the building was so upset that these people were praying and they were waiting for the congressman to respond from Washington. He decided to call the cops. And they started to arrest everybody. And here I was with Sister Juliana. And I said, okay, it's time to go. And so Sister turns around and looks at me and she said, Norma, we can't say we believe in something and then we just run away when things get tough, like they are right now. So we both cannot get arrested because somebody has to take care of the families at the center. So you decide who stays. I was young, she was old. I said to her, I guess it's me, right? And she said, okay, bye. And she left me there. Boy, was that an experience. It was an awakening. Wow. It was that moment that I realized that I stood for something. It was what it meant to say yes to God. I stand for people. I believe in defending life and speaking up for them. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing what you have witnessed on the border. And, you know, as I was listening to you, I was thinking of the time when I went to El Paso to do intake and to receive these children and to see the conditions that they were in after being in detention centers. And my heart breaks, you know? So thank you for sharing that and for sharing what you have witnessed in your stories of how God put you in this place to witness and share those experiences with us so you can inspire us. I wanted to start off with the title of this conversation, two words that really stand out to me, which is solidarity and resistance. And I wonder if you could expand on these two words. What do they mean to you? And perhaps maybe relate that to the work of Bishop Oscar Romero.
Wow, okay, so solidarity is so clear for me that it is being part and being with those who are struggling in life, who are at a loss of things or circumstances, and we identify with them, care for them, and stand with them in the process of their struggles. And so we take note of it, and we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that they're important to all of us, and they're part of who we are. I think that's what solidarity means for me, you know, that we must all together join in the suffering and the process of whatever it is that someone is going through. We become one with them in that struggle. Okay. And resistance, it's a tougher word for me. I think that in the sense of Oscar Romero, I would think that what he encountered, my opportunity to have understood him, and what he went through, the conversion that he went through, you know, the fact that he as men of the church, had to go face the reality of what the people there in his country were struggling and suffering, and until he saw, he was able to then recognize that we must be part of resisting just what others are doing to hurt our people. Because when you hurt others, they're part of us, and we must resist, and we must say, enough, stop the abuses, stop the insanity of what is happening. And we cannot just simply be silent, as I said. We must speak up, we must say it's wrong, and speak the truth. I think that for me is resistance. Resistance to allow things to just happen without doing anything about it.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, I would love to hear, and maybe if you could share with us, what that compassionate work looks like on the daily. What do you do daily? What do your volunteers do? You talk about, restoring human dignity. What does that entail?
I always say about trying to understand what our role is on a day-to-day basis for anyone and I've had seminarians come to me and ask me, Sister, I'm going to be going to the communities where the immigrants are. What do I do? What do I say? How do I prepare myself? And my response to them has always been, just be present. Allow yourself to be there with them, and let God guide you as to what you need to say and what you need to do. Don't worry about what you're going to do, but rather just be there, and God will let you know what it is that you must do. So I think that when you allow yourself to be present, you will know what to do. And I'll share an experience of a Border Patrol agent. I have a very good relationship with the Border Patrol after my first encounter with them. And I'll share this story about how one time, most recently, I spent a lot of time doing this, talking. And so when I have a chance every day, I go visit the center when we have people. Right now, we don't have anybody because of these new policies and administration. But when we had people, I would stop and my staff would say, Sister, ask this man, this father who was just arriving, how he got those tennis shoes that he has on. And I asked him, I saw him, he's there, a tiny young man with his wife and his kids. It was all dirty, but his tennis shoes were brand new. And I asked him, how did you get those tennis shoes, And he said, well, when I entered the country with my family, we crossed the river, the agent that took us, and they started to question us, and he looked at my feet, and I didn't have any shoes because they had torn along the way, and they were all bleeding. My feet were bleeding, and they were all cut up. And he was very moved to see my feet like this, and he said, un momento. And he goes out to the parking lot, and he takes out a pair of tennis shoes that he has in his truck, comes back inside and kneels down and takes off his shoes and his socks, puts them on this father. He puts them on me and then puts me his brand new pair of tennis shoes, and that's how I have them, That's compassion, That is what we're called to be able to respond to what is before us,
And I wonder if we could expand on your response here, because it's something that I've been wondering is how you maintain the relationships with Border Patrol and CBP, and also maybe the Sheriff's Office and all of these entities that are part of this ecosystem down at the border. And I wonder if you could expand on how you maintain these relationships and also the importance of building these bridges for the work that you do.
It is important that we recognize that we're all partners, that we're all one, and that we're not enemies. We all do a different mission, a different aspect of our responsibility. And we all believe, in the care of a person, And so I think that we have established a continuous relationship and helping. I've had persons from CBP call me from the bridge and say, "Sister, I have a family that needs something clothing and they're all wet. Can you help me out?" Or I have a child, he's crying as a baby, and until they come for them, I don't know, my agents, and he said, "I'll be right there and I'll take my counselors." And so we work together, we're there for one another, and they're human beings, they're people who care, they're parents, they're fathers and mothers that go home and see their children. And so they struggle too when they see this reality, and they also have to do their job. And so we have to learn how to respect and be there for one another and help each other out. I think it's very important to maintain connections with everybody.
And speaking about that, do you, speak about presence. Do you think we all need to go to Texas to witness what is happening?
It wouldn't hurt if you come down. You're all welcome to come down. But honestly, people are everywhere today. They're here in your community, they're everywhere. And so you need to see what's happening in your community. You need to come together as a community and start to see what it is that you need to do, that you can do, and you can help those families that are needing your help here. Welcome them into your community and be part of their lives. They've loved so much, they need to know that they're important also in this community. And so I think that's one way to respond. You can also speak up and be interested in knowing the facts and knowing the truth, and not just be guided by what you hear in the media or by politicians trying to make us believe things that are not necessarily true, but that are supporting their platform of whatever agenda they have. The truth is what we need to highlight and recognize, and it's important that we learn how to be part of that and to not lose the part of who we are as people of faith, and bring that out in all these uncertain times. It needs to be important.
Speaking of being a woman of faith, I wonder if you could maybe expand on the ways that, because this is a question I get when I go to the border with a camera and I'm walking around, documenting stories and witnessing, the changes that are happening in terms of the internment camps, the kind of the narratives of people crossing the border on the daily, and just trying to capture these stories. And I wonder if you could speak about how you maintain your safety, given the kind of hostile media landscape that we have today. And you were telling us a little bit about, even giving some of these talks, encountering people who come to, receive you in a not so kind way. So I wonder if you could expand on the ways that you maybe keep yourself safe, or how you ensure that. Do you even worry about that? And perhaps how do you ensure the safety of your volunteers as well?
I actually do not. Honestly, people are very concerned for me and try to make sure that I try to be safe, but it's hard to do that and to be worried about yourself when you have so many things to do, I'll share an experience I had once, and I was coming out of the respite center and I was ready to go. It's right downtown and it's across from the bus station. And so this young man, as I was coming out, the security guard that is at our center, that controls who enters our center and everything, were right there. And I just came out of that door, and this young man just very quickly sort of ran into my face. And it was during COVID. He was wearing this little sleeve that they used to wear in COVID that covers their whole face like that. Very tall guy. And he just in a second was right there in front of me, And I go, oh, I didn't say what I said, This is it, I honestly, for that moment, I said, there's no way I can just run away from this, you know? And I just said, and he looks at me and he says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes." I said, and I said, "What is your name?" And he said, "My name is Michael the Archangel." I said, "Okay." And then because he was tall, you know, and I said, "Okay," and he was right here. And I said, "What is your question?" And he said, "God told me that I needed to love everybody, and I want you to tell me how I'm supposed to do that." And I said, "Okay, you can start by loving the person in front of you." And he looked up and he said, "Okay." And he just takes off. And he says, "Excuse me, what did you say your name was?" And he said, "Michael the Archangel." "Okay, very good, thank you, sir." That's as close as it's got. But anyway, I don't think we can prepare or do anything about it. You know, whatever's going to happen will happen. Let us hope it doesn't.
And speaking of these exchanges that you have in these very transitory spaces, I wonder if you could tell us some relationships that have endured from these encounters that you've had over the years.
I'll say that again, please.
Oh, in terms of like meeting people one-on-one, maybe in these transitory spaces where they're, you know, you get to meet them and maybe not see them the next day, or they're only there for a week. I wonder if you've built some relationships that have lasted, you know.
Immigrants.
Yeah, with immigrants.
Yes, some families continue to reach out. Facebook is a very common way how some of them will send pictures, and families that I met, especially during COVID, and that people were kept in Mexico and remain in Mexico policy. I visited every day the camp where they were along the river, and I got to meet many of the families on a regular basis and the struggles that they went through while they were waiting there to try to get their asylum. And so when they were allowed into the United States at some point, they continued to reach out and say hello through Facebook and send pictures of their kids. And so that's nice, you know. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen with some people.
Wow. And I wanted to kind of bring it back. I know we only have a few more minutes to chat about, you know, some of the current events that are happening in terms of the funding, the you know, lack of funding that's happening to some of these organizations, especially FEMA. And I'm wondering what strategies are you developing to try to counter that, to try to pivot around the potential of losing some of this funding?
You know, when we started, we didn't have any federal funds. These federal funds came the last 3-4 years. Initially, it was all the generosity of the people, you know, of people that gave. I mean, I had one time a lady who cleaned houses comes over and she says, "I want to help." After she went to clean houses, she came and helped me sort with the clothing, you know. That was her way and she gave me $2, you know. People gave whatever they have, you know. And it's one thing that Bishop there in South Texas always says, the people here, even though are the poorest one of the poorest areas in the nation, have a big heart, you know. And not only from the valley, but from everywhere else, have always believed in supporting and giving of themselves and sharing some of what they have with those that don't. And so we have always had the means to help people because of that. And so, of course, he did help. And actually, it was the Trump administration the first time that actually Congress passed to help these efforts of humanitarian responses along the border in the United States, and was the first time that we received monies, and we were able to hire security guards and staff and things like that, and it was a more secure way to sustain the operation. But I think that the most important part that we do is the welcoming, the receiving them, the care. And if I don't have food, I can't help, you know. if I don't have something, I won't be able to do that. But what they will get is what they need the most, the fact that they were seen as people that they matter, you know. I think that's the most important thing that we offer them. And so I'll share one story of a lady who, when we did have families at the center, and we had 500 or 600 a day. And this lady, when I was walking into the center, and she comes to me, the place was filled with people where we were trying to help them. And she's dirty, her clothing was not clean, and she wanted to take a bath. And she had already her ticket to leave, and so she comes to me and she says, help me, I want to take a bath. I want to get clean clothing. And I have my ticket already. In 1 month, in 1 week, 1 hour, I have to be in the bus. It's just across the street. And I looked at the center and I said, there's no way I'm going to find anything right now and have her go and take a shower. And I looked at her and I said, I wish I could give you that. I really do, because I know how important that is to take a shower and get clean clothing. But I'm not able to do that. But you're okay. You're okay. You made it. You're here. You know that there's so many people out there where you were going and struggling who may not make it. But you are here and you're okay, right? And she said, yes, I am. Thank you. And she took off and got in that bus.
Wow. And, building off of that, I think I have time for one more question. And I wanted to know if you could maybe speak to and maybe give us a few takeaways, a few resources. What can we do being removed from the border, but truly connected to it? Because, this is a kind of a global issue. It's a humanitarian issue. And I wonder if you could give us some resources, some takeaways. What can we do here, not being so close to the border?
I think put an interest in informing yourself, hearing stories, find families that can share their stories, why they came, why did they leave their country, how was their experience, their journey, what did they encounter, what are they presently struggling with, what are their needs. I think that is so important so that you can really help yourself put in perspective the reality of who they are, and be able to correct others that may have a distorted understanding of who an immigrant truly is, And I think that's very important to find out the truth about what really is the facts of immigrants, and not just let yourself be misguided of what you hear others or want you to believe, And get involved in those things that you can do. You can speak to your representatives, you can help educate them, you can help them support issues or legislation that is important, that will address the things that we as people of faith support, I think those are so important things. Support things and groups and agencies that are doing something good, that is making a difference, or start something new yourself, something that is needed and it's not happening, One of the number one things that people need right now is legal representation, and you have somebody here in the audience that does that. She needs a lot of help, help her,
Thank you for your wisdom and for guiding us into your vision of what we could do to find solutions. Mm-hmm. We're going to move along to some pre-submitted questions from the audience. I believe it's going to take like 30 seconds to just shift here, but I want to thank you. Just be honest, truthful moment here. I've been meaning to meet you. I wanted to meet you for so long in my trips to the border, as a volunteer, as a filmmaker, as just a witness. And so it's a pleasure to meet you and to be here in your presence and to hear your wisdom and your vision for the future.
Hello, my name's Mary. I'm a theology student here, among other things. First of all, I just want to say thank you. It's been really beautiful. You had me moved to tears many times. And I had myself thinking, well, I got to do something this whole time you were talking. And I'm curious if you just spoke to it a little bit, but if you could speak a little bit more about what we can do as students to engage that radical welcome and mercy that you were speaking of throughout the talk, and then also how we can help our peers and loved ones understand and maybe have a change of hearts.
Yes, well, I think that you need to be able to not be afraid to talk, okay? I mean, sometimes we hold back because people are going to disagree with what you have. I don't think we need to enter into a discussion of who's right. It's simply about sharing how you feel and talk about yourself and what you think and what you believe and why that is important to you. We need to have the courage to speak up about of what God is telling you to say about yourself, you know? And and why you feel that way, you know, why you think that's important. I think we cannot hold back from speaking about what God is doing in ourselves, you know, and sharing that faith with others, you know, because I know that in our families we have some that believe one way and some that believe another way, and it can get pretty nasty, right, if we start to fight about it, because I know families that have done that. I don't think we need to go there. I think we need to just simply learn to when you hear something that you don't agree, you say, I don't know that that's necessarily correct, because I believe God is calling us to love, to care, to be kind. And in that response, I don't see that happening, you know? Simple things like that, I think we need to have the courage to say, okay?
Thank you, Sister, for being present with us tonight. My name is Dan Griffin, and I'm the director of the university's partnership with Catholic Relief Services. This is a very difficult time for humanitarians or anybody who simply wants to help. My question is, what has been the impact of a more militarized southern border these days?
Well, I think that we see them everywhere. You know, the military, and I don't think that they do very much other than just be present, you know, and so because I don't know that they help the Border Patrol. I think that's a good thing that they can do, you know, they assist the Border Patrol in things, but personally, I think that those funds in bringing the military to the border could be used otherwise in better ways, you know. Definitely, it's, in my opinion, possibly not the best way to utilize our resources.
Amen.
Hello, thank you so much for your beautiful words. I found it really inspiring. My name is Sydney. I'm a current law student, and I'm with the Farm Worker Legal Aid Clinic here at Villanova. As you mentioned, immigrants are everywhere, and there's certainly a lot of work being done here in Philadelphia. I wanted to ask about the role of art in your life, and particularly the role of art in your work as an immigration advocate.
Art?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I love art, and so I actually can do it when I can allow myself to be calm and quiet, and that usually is at night. And so I have painted, and I mostly use pastels because it's a quicker way to make sure it finishes very quickly. And I usually use my art to give for auctions in fundraisers for events that some churches have. And I like to capture the mother and the child that enters the center, and I snap a picture and then I paint that. And so I feel that it's a beautiful way to capture the life of the immigrant mom, you know, and the love they have for their children, because they usually wrap it around their bodies with a sarape, with some kind of cloth, you know, and that closeness to themselves, mother and child. I think that's so revealing of the love they have, you know, and so that's my way of capturing the moment, you know. I gave one to the Holy Father that I painted, and I told him so that you can, when you put it in your chapel where you pray daily, you can be able to remember the families that are migrating and that are present at the border with us. Yeah, so.
Thank you very much, Sister. My name is Terrence Sweeney. I teach in the Honors Program and Humanities Department here at Villanova. And a big part of the challenge, I think, is about communication. So what are ways we can explain to people in the United States that not only is helping immigrants good, but also that how much immigrants give to our communities and make our country a better place to live in for all of us?
Yes, when we've had a lot of people in our center that there's no room to put any more, I've even brought them to my house and put them in the hall in the chapel. And even in the center when they arrive, one of the things they bring to us is their faith. And when you see a dad kneeling down before the Blessed Sacrament or before the statue of Mother Mary, crying in their knees and talking so gently to our mother, it just lifts me and tells me how important it is to have them here with us. It is helping us to sanctify us as people in America, aside from the fact that they also work the labor that nobody else wants to do. But most importantly, I think their faith, we need that faith in our communities, It's making our land holy by having them here.
Hello, thank you, Sister Norma. Your story was very inspiring. My name is Lupita Ramirez. I'm a third-year nursing student, and my question is, how do you move past fear and continue to have hope in the midst of everything that's happening?
I'm sorry, but I missed the first part.
I got you. How do you move past fear?
Okay, I'm not afraid. Honest, don't worry about it, I'm too busy with doing things that if I stop myself to be worried, then I won't do very much, And I think that I just know that I get up every morning, I start my day by spending a lot of time before the Blessed Sacrament in silence, just present with God, so He can then tell me what I need to do for the day. And so fear kind of cuts brush off away. I don't even think about it, okay?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for those questions and for giving us your wisdom. I have one last question, and it really, before we transition to our, kind of our last, conversation here, point of conversation, but just for my own knowledge, because I love the Rio Grande Valley. It is a place that I love going back to, and I love the people there, the culture there, and the food. So I wonder if you could maybe make some recommendations. Where are the best places to get tamales?
Oh, oh my goodness. In the valley?
In the valley. It's competitive, so.
Well, everybody in the valley goes to Delia's. It's not the best ones, but but they're there, but I don't know. I guess the ones you make at home is probably the better ones,
I love that. Thank you. The secret sauce is at home.
For coming to our home today and being able to share your wisdom, your stories with us. It's truly been an incredible evening, and you coming all this way to speak with us has meant an incredible amount. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.